Hey guys, Omerko here, self-taught web developer. So I plan to create this kind of series, a playlist on my channel where I would explore different APIs with one of the JavaScript frameworks or even with the core JavaScript. The first one would be the Angular. So we could create a playlist of exploring the APIs with Angular. And the first API that we would explore is this fun API called chucknorris.io. And it is used basically just to pull some of the jokes for the famous Chuck Norris, right? If we could see through this API, we could have the random joke by this URL parameter, or this is how the JSON will look like. Then we could also pull the different categories. Here are the categories, and here is the random joke based on category. And also we could pull the joke from a search that we would enter. So we could have an input field and send a query to their API, and we would get some multiple jokes in this option. So I also created the project that we will create today together. The project is here, and here you could see that there is a logo, input to search, also the categories pulled from their website, and a random joke here. So for example, if I click sport here, it will basically give me the joke for the sport. And if I type something like home and search, it will give me multiple jokes regarding the home. So as I mentioned, this is the fully open API, and I think that it will be fun to explore it. Also, I highly recommend to know at least basics of Angular and its workflows before continuing through this video. So let's start with coding. So this is the place where I would generate my Angular project. To do that, we would run ng new, and we could type project name. It would be Chuck API. When I hit enter, we would first get asked about the routing. As we will use just the app file, the main file, we won't have the routes, so no for this. And also we would be asked regarding the stylings, how we wish to continue. We would use CSS. So now it will generate the project for us. So once this is finished, we could route ourselves into the project. So cd chuck API, and here I will type code and that to open up my Visual Studio Code. So here on our sidebar we have just the usual project based on Angular, right? So here are the main files that we would use: app.html, CSS, TypeScript is also here. So as you could see, the HTML already have some content. This is just the static Angular content that you get when you create the Angular project. So now let's run this project. So here I would type ng serve and -- open. This open flag will immediately open up our project in browser. Once everything is finished and compiled, we would be routed to our local host 4200, and here is what we have currently on our project in our app.html file. So now we will remove everything from this HTML, and we would have 4 different segments in our HTML file. So as you know, as you saw on the start of this video, we would have a main content. This is the wrapper for entire content on our website. So main content on our app, sorry. I will type end of main content. I like to put comments also, so yeah. Then 4 different segments that we would have is a logo. It will go here. Then the next part will be search. End of search. Third part will be categories. Yeah. And the 4th part will be jokes that we would render. Jokes. So, end of jokes. Oh. End of jokes. Yeah. So now we could divide all of those by different components, import those together, right, and use service to share the logic, etc. But we won't do that, as this is just a simple project, right? We would use a service to communicate with the API, but everything will be rendered directly in app main component file, right? So first of all, let's work with this logo. So for a logo, I will go to their website. So now, as you could see, we have an empty Angular project as we removed everything from HTML. So on their website, we have this logo. I would just save an image. So we would save this image in our main project, source, assets, and then we would create the image folder and save here. So once this is done, we can import our logo. So in our HTML, I could just put the image like this, and then I would route myself to get the logo. So assets, image, Chuck Norris logo, Chuck. Let me put the alt also, Chuck Norris logo, and I would also put a class on it, type logo, just for this. For the search content, we would have a main section like search content, and here we would have an input field. Type is text, that's okay. Then we would have a placeholder. This is just the default text that the user will get once they come to a screen. Enter your search term, right? Also in search content we will have a button. Button will be type of a button. Then text in button will be search. Then for categories here, we would have a main section with the class of categories, right? And inside we would have a span element. Span element will just have some kind of text here. Category, yeah. And we could put 3 of those just for the beginning to have multiple categories just to see on a screen. Also for jokes, we would have a main section of joke wrapper. Then we would have each individual joke, right? And inside of that we would have a image for the joke logo. So source could be the current logo that we have for now. Later when we hit the API we would get some kind of icon. So let me put icon here, as it will be the icon. And also I would have a P element here for paragraph, just the joke, funny joke. So let's also I will copy this couple of times, right? So let me copy entire joke wrapper like 2 more times just to see it on the screen. So now let's go to browser. So here inside of our browser we have the logo, there is the search term, there is category, there are no jokes. Let me refresh the page. Yeah, here it is. So 3 of the categories and 3 jokes, right? So now let's work with styling so this could look nicer. So back in our Visual Studio Code, I would open up a CSS file, and here I would type main content. Well, before everything I would go to styles.css, and here I will put some base content for this one. So let me put on every element put a margin to 0 and padding also to 0, and also body. So font family, we could use a different fonts like Georgia. That's okay, I think. So now back into app CSS file. So here I would first style my main content, and I will put the width to it of 700 pixels. So it doesn't take the whole screen. The goal here is to have this main content wrapper in center. So the main content should be in center. So we will do that by merging 0 to top and bottom, and we will put auto to left and right, so it will be in center. We will also put text align to center, so every text inside should go to center. And let me put the padding like 40 pixels, 0 pixels, so 40 pixels from top and bottom, and left and right 0. So now logo section. So we would target our logo icon, and you know that it has a class of logo. We could check that here. So there is logo image and class logo is there. So now we will just put the width to it of 50%, so it won't be that big image, right? Then search content. For this one, we would first target the main content, search content section div, and we will put the margin to it to 30 pixels, 0 pixels, 15 pixels. So this will be 30 from top, 0 left and right, and 15 from the bottom, just to have some spacing. We would also display this display as flex. So the reason for the flex here is, so basically we don't wish to handle the widths in pixels or percentages, we will just let the flex box do its thing, right? So search content again, and now to target that input field, input. So we will put the flex of 3 here, it will be 3 times bigger than a button that we will have here. So margin also right will be 30 pixels. So it will be moved from a button, and also padding 12 pixels, 8 pixels, just to put some padding to it, a bit spacing inside of our input field. So now, as we wish to have button next to the input field, so we will target search content, then button, and then inside we will put flex to 1. The flex box now will basically put these 2 elements next to each other. Then BG color, transparent, outline should be none. We could have a border here. Border could be 1 pixel, solid AAA, yeah. And cursor should be pointer. Nice. So now for categories, we could target our main content, categories, and each category inside, category. So as our categories are basically span elements, where are those? Here they are. So they are already inline elements, they are not block elements. So we could basically just write content as the inline, as for the inline elements. So we could display those as inline block, just to be sure. Then padding should be 4 pixels to put some spacing. Then border should be 1 pixel, solid, same color, AAA. Margin could be 0 from top, 0 pixels, 5 pixels from right, 10 pixels from bottom to put a bit spacing for the jokes, and 0 pixels from the left. And then we will put cursor pointer, as those should be clickable, and border radius should be 10 pixel, so to put a bit curve on the categories itself. So for the jokes now, so here jokes, we would have joke wrapper, as this is the main content, main div. We would put the padding on it to 15 pixels, 10 pixels, yeah. Then border, well, border should be 1 pixel, solid AAA, as we had for all the elements for now. Then margin bottom will be 15 pixels. This margin is just basically to take care of the next joke that will come, so those are not stacked together. Then, now that we have a joke wrapper, whoop, yeah, so 15 pixels, sorry. So now that we have a joke wrapper, I would use a joke wrapper dot joke, and I would display that as flex. So the reason for flex here is basically we would have the icon and the text on the side, so those should be in line kinda. So I would joke wrapper dot joke and image for that icon. I will put first the width of the image to be 50 pixel, so to not be larger, and flex could be 1. So basically it will stretch the image through 1 column, but at the most of the cases it will be 50 pixels. Then joke wrapper dot joke, and paragraph that we have is well, it should put the flex, let's say 8, it will be most of the content. Then margin left could be 20 pixels, and text align could be left, right, to be sure. So let's see what we have for now on our screen. So here it is kinda. If I refresh the page, yeah, the categories are not right, obviously. They are all in line, but they didn't got stylings right. Let's check that. So back here, we have categories. Let me see, categories. Oh yeah, I forgot to put individual class here. So class category, and also, okay, so now let's go back into browser. So now it looks much better, right? So now let's start working with the API and the logic for this app. And for that, we would go here and create, I will open up another console on the side to create a service that we will use to communicate with the API. So I would use ng generate service, and service should be called jokes, and I would use a flag here skip tests. So we don't need any test file here, so we would just create a service without the test file. Once this is done and we go to our Visual Studio Code, we will have a jokes service file here. So as we will work with the APIs and we would use this HTTP client from Angular that it gives us, we should import it. So I will go to app.module file, and here I will import HTTP client module, and I don't know if this will find it, never mind, let me import it like this, import HTTP client module from @Angular common /HTTP. So now that we have HTTP client imported, we should also import it inside our service. So import HTTP client, not module here, so from @Angular common /HTTP. Yes. So now to use this HTTP client, we need to put it in a constructor. So private HTTP will be of type of HTTP client. So now my first goal here is to get at least one random joke and to render it here. So for the random joke, here is the get method to get the random joke, and we will use this one here. So I would create a get random joke method, get random joke, and this method will return to us this.http. We should use this HTTP now, and there is a get method on it that we could use, and we could use it just by copy and pasting this URL, and it will work fine. But if we go to our API, here you can see that all URLs are kinda /jokes, then /something. For this one is random, for this one is random, then categories and search, right? So we could basically just stash this. So here I will copy this part, cut it out, and then I will create the private API URL, which will be a string for this one. So now when we use this get method, we could use this.api URL plus random, and this should work fine. So to test if this is working okay, we will go to app component TypeScript file, and here I will remove this title. Then I would implement something called implements on init. This should be imported from Angular /core, and now we could run method called ng on init. So this method will run when we come to this page, basically. So we also need to put something else here called constructor. Here it is. And for a constructor, the part that we wish to have here is basically to import our jokes service, to use the methods from jokes service. So private jokes service, type of jokes service, and we would import that from jokes service TypeScript file. So now when we come to the ng on init, when we come to our page, we run this method. We will use this .jokes service, and we would use the method that we have on it, get random joke. So as HTTP is basically run by observables in the background, we could call something called subscribe on it. We could subscribe to this method. We would get some kind of joke from it, and we could console.log joke. Let me put also like this joke, and now to console log it. let's go to our browser. Once we are here, I will open up my console. So here it is, console tab, and now when we refresh the page, there it is. There is a joke that we just pulled from the API. So this is working, right? So now we could also use this data to present it on a screen. So first of all, we need to save this data somewhere. For that, I will create a jokes array, and this array will be type of any, and it will be empty initially. So once we get the joke here, we would use this dot jokes, and we could push to this array, and we will push our joke here. So the reason why we would have array here is basically we could pull multiple jokes by search term, and we should render all of those on our screen. So now let's go into HTML and render dynamic joke here. So I will delete these two jokes that I have and left with just one. So for the first one here, I would use something called ng4. This is the directive that we get from Angular, and basically it allows us to loop through some kind of data and present each individual data from that to our screen. So I would use the let joke of jokes, so we are looping through jokes, right? And for each joke here, I would property bind this to source. We won't use the icon logo that we have here, but this time we would use the icon that we get from our API. So it is called joke dot and icon URL. And also for a joke itself, now we would have some text here, and text should be joke dot value that we get from our API. So let's now go to our browser and check this out. So obviously there is a joke here. If I refresh the page, it should pull another random one. Yeah, this is working. This is also working. So I also wish to pull the categories here and to show those on a screen. So we would use this URL. I will copy it right now. Let's go into service. So now that you know the drill, you could try to do it on your own, but you could also follow up with me. So I would have this method called get categories, and for that, get categories, I would return this .http .get. This is literally the same thing that we are doing. So if I copy this here, I could cut this out and use this .API URL plus, and categories could be in quotes. So now that we have these get categories, we could go to our app component TS file and use those here. So we could use this .jokes service .get categories, and as it is the observable, we could subscribe to it, and we will get categories, and we would set also the array for the categories as we have for the jokes. So categories, type of any. We don't really need to have types right now, but you could add it on your own. Create the model interface and use the types here. It is a great practice to use it in Angular, as it is using TypeScript, and it is the normal practice to use. So we would use this categories to be equal to categories, as we will get these categories as an array. So we are getting this kind of error here. So let me just these categories put in another parentheses and set to be any, type of any. So this should remove the error. So now that we have the jokes down here, we could move this a bit up inside of the get categories. So once we get categories, then we would get the joke. So this could be because the categories are the first on a screen, so they should be loaded first. So now let's go and check this on a screen. Well, sorry, we didn't import those inside of our HTML. So to import those, we would delete the two of categories, as we don't need those anymore, and we could use ng4 here. So let category of categories, right? And here we could use just this let from the categories. So now on our screen, there it is, all of those are here. So those are not currently clickable. There is the cursor pointer, but those are not clickable. And once we click one of those, it should pull out the random joke for those. So let's check API for that. So this is how this should look like. So I will copy this and let's go in a service. So inside of our service, we could get joke by category. Let's create a get category joke method. And this method will get a string once we click on some type of category. So category, it will get the category basically name. So category, it will be a string. So now that we are set to get it, let's now use return this.http. It is also a get method. And as usual, we could put inside our API URL. So first of all, we should remove this part here as we don't need it. We will use it like this .api URL plus random. So this here, as now we should put the category, dynamic category here, this one that we are getting here. We should remove these quotes and use backticks instead. So we could create a placeholder for it. So random should be category, set to, and then here will be category. This is the placeholder for our category. So now let's go into app.component.ts file, and here we could create a method that basically will give us the category by joke by category. So search by category, search by category. So this method here could now use this .jokes service, and inside of the service there is a method called get category joke, and we could subscribe to this method, subscribe, and we will get something back. It will be usually the random joke, just one. So we will type joke. So here we wish to this jokes push, and we will push this joke to our jokes. We could also reset our jokes here, like this jokes equals to empty array. So we could also just have one joke on a screen. You could see that we have a red line here. It is basically because we need to pass the category to our service. So I would pass category like this. Here we need to import it. String. It is the type of string. So once we are at our HTML file, here by clicking on each individual category, we could run a click event listener. We would run a function search by category, and we would pass this individual category that we are getting from this loop. So now once we go to our browser, let's now use science, for example. Click, and there it is. It is working. Travel, great. Sport, great. So the only part left is to enter the search term and search categories by that. So if we go to our API, and there it is, right? So this get method won't give us one joke but multiple jokes, and this is the reason why we have those jokes set as an array. So let's go into our Visual Studio Code. So back in our service here, now we could run one more method here called get search get search jokes. Yeah, then we would create a method get search joke. This should have s on the end, and we would have a search term for that. So this search term is type of string, and inside of our method we would return this.http.get, and let's see what we don't need here. So we don't need this jokes part, yes, as we will use this.api URL plus search term. This is great. We will also use backticks here because we need to have a placeholder for this query here. So we would put placeholder and search term. So now that we have get search jokes, let's go into our app component file, and here we could also have a method search by search term. So now search by search term, this is the method, and we could use this dot jokes service dot the method that we need. This method should get some search term, so we would pass to it search term, and we would get it from HTML, so we would also import it here. It is a type of string. So now that we are using this get search jokes from our service, we could subscribe, and here we will get jokes, not one joke but jokes. These jokes we could set it to be type of any, as we don't have a static type for now, and we could use this dot jokes to be equal to jokes. So once we set up this, we could use this method in our markup. So in HTML, once we search here, right, we could put a local reference to this input called search term, and on a click of a button, so click, we could run a method that we have in our TypeScript, and we could pass this search term that value. Also, in our TypeScript file, the good thing to have is to first check if this search term is not empty. So if search term is not equal to an empty string, then we would run this method. Otherwise, we won't. So let's now go into our browser and check this. So here I will refresh the page. I will type home, search. There is probably some kind of error. Let me go to console. There it is. The reason for this is basically when we console log our jokes, here console.log jokes, in our browser, when we type home and go search, we would have this console, and you can see that there is no jokes here. There is a result with the jokes. So we need to fix this. So here, instead of binding these jokes to just jokes, we would bind those to jokes dot result. Yeah, save it. Now it should work. Home, search, there it is. Great. Money, there it is. Sport, great. So I know that we didn't use any type of model here for our data. We could set one right now. So let me go into code, and here when we get our joke, random joke, I will console.log joke, just to see how this model should look like. So back in our browser, you could see that there it is. So now let's create the same model like this. So I will have my model created in app folder, so no new file, joke.model.ts, and we would export interface joke, and let's set it. There will be categories, and it will be an array of strings, string array. Then next part is created at, this will be a date. Then we would have icon URL, this will be a string. Then we would have the ID, also a string. Updated at date. Then URL string and value string. So let's import this in our service here. There is a problem, I mistyped the date. So to import it here, we would use models import joke from joke model. Great. So now when we get the random joke, we know the type that we will get will be joke. It is the one, right? Then for categories, we would get the string array. Then for this part here, the random joke by category, also a joke, and for this one here we would have joke array. We would get the joke, well, not really, because we need to hit the result inside, so we would just put the any type of this, or we could put like this result, the object result, which will be a type of joke array, and also amount, which is type of number. So now in our app component TS, we don't need to bind it like here, like this. We could import model to app component also, just to be clear. So now jokes are joke array. Then where we are getting the joke, here is the joke. We could set it to be joke to be a joke, simple one. Then we could, this is categories, also the joke should be setted. And here, as we are getting the jokes, now we don't need to pass to any to it, it will bind immediately. So for example, if I use jokes now and use that, you can see that we have amount and result here, and we need result. So also for the each individual joke, if I use push here and like say like joke dot, we would have all the data from that joke, like categories created at, etc., that we have inside of our model. We don't need those, we just need a joke here. So this is the good practice to have in the Angular project in a TypeScript, as it is using the TypeScript. So if we go back to our project, everything should look the same without problems. Home, here, if we click something, it will give us the joke. Also, these categories are the string arrays, so let's fix that also. So in joke service, when we get categories, we have already set up the string arrays. In app component, we have categories set to any, it should be string arrays. So yeah, and when we get these categories here, it should be string arrays. And this should do the work. Yes, so I honestly hope that you learned something new and great today. I plan to create a lot more this kind of videos in the future, where we would explore different APIs, just some for fun and also some that could be really useful. Thank you for watching this. If you like this type of the content, please click like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you could get notified on my latest content. By the way, I'm posting the content each week, so weekly, so be sure to check out. Thank you and see you in the next one.